Unaussprechlichen Ramblen.
My name is Marco Visconti, and through this podcast I will invite fellow magicians, occultists, artists, and mystics to ramble along with them and my supporters on Patreon. By doing so, I hope to introduce you all to a much wider perspective on magic than what we get nowadays from occult social media, which is frankly beginning to feel very stale, repetitive, and uninspired. If you want to be part of one of the next episodes, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Marco Visconti by pledging at the Yesod tier or above. And now, on with the unspeakable rumbles. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode... What episode is this? This must be episode 8 of the Unaussprechlichen Ramblen. First episode of season 2, apparently, because I decided to divide all of this into seasons to complicate everything and, the computations of the episodes. So, like, in a few months' time, I was like, what season is this? I don't know. Anyway, season 2, episode 8. Doesn't make sense already. Tonight, we have a fantastic guest, Tommie Kelly, and where do I start? I mean, Tommie really is a fascinating character. As usual, I like to let you all know the way they describe themselves, all my guests, right? And Tommie describes himself as this. He is an Irish artist, a musician, and a writer, but not always in that order. He used to describe himself as the world's only consulting occultist. But people didn't get the reference to it was and thought it was being serious, so he doesn't do that now. By the way, I just got it now. I wanted to ask you, Tommie, why? And then I was like, it's true. Now I get it. At gunpoint, he would describe himself as a non-dual chaos magician. We'll get back to that. But he isn't overly fond of labels, as their function seems to be mostly about limiting things or putting them into boxes. He has a lifelong interest in all things occult and spirituality, and his only actual qualifications are in holistic health studies, being qualified in Aromatherapy, Reflexology, holistic massage, Indian head massage, and Reiki. Indian head massage, that sounds interesting. We need to talk about that. But he doesn't practice any of this these days other than for personal use of aromatherapy, which he finds extremely pleasant and helpful. Well, welcome, Tommie.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. I had a bit of a terrible Christmas, but I'm glad it's the new year.
Why is that? What happened Christmas?
I decided to to get the booster 2 days before Christmas, and then spent Christmas being quite sick.
Oh, so, man. I know the feeling. Like, my first vaccine knocked me out for 4 days, second for 2, booster for 3. So I was like, it's it's interesting because I wanted to start asking how's been your Christmas, and that's it. Like, you've been
other than that, it was fine. Christmas is a bit odd now at the minute because like all the things that make Christmas kind of doesn't exist at the minute. Family and going out and all that. So it's kind of in one way it's nice too, just to have the kind of a bit less of the noise and a bit more of the silence. But
okay.
It's hard to know.
It's interesting because, like, I grew up loving Christmas. Then, during my teenage years, that's when I also discovered Telema and Crowley, and I became a goth. And, of course, everything was like, Christmas, that's bad. You don't do that. Why are you talking about? You're crazy. And now, in my middle age, I kind of like it, actually. And, I was lucky this year. I was able to do a little bit of Christmas again after, the absurd debacle of last year between lockdowns and COVID. And I was like, let's never talk about 2020.
Yeah, I literally had COVID for Christmas the year previous. So
me too.
It was just not nice. No, yeah. And the only way I just thought I was really, really sick because I don't really go out or whatever. But me and my friend did meet up just before, so that's where I got it. But I remember thinking like on the day after Christmas, going, that aftershave I got for Christmas doesn't really have much of a smell. And I went, oh no,
yeah. Was it very bad for you? Like, was it really?
It was when I get say with lack of sleep or when I'm really tired, I can get very depressed and very down and very kind of that. So that was the main thing. I didn't have any of the lung thing at all. I just had like, I just felt like the worst hangover you've ever had, where everything, your noise sensitivity, your light sensitivity, and you wake up after sleeping 12 hours and you think, geez, I'd love to have a sleep. You're just like so tired.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's it. Like,
I had it badly, as in, like, I mean, I keep saying it's been the worst illness of my life, and I suffer from kidney stones. So you know,
right. Yeah. All right. Wow. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It was quite intense. Yeah, and then I had like the 2 months of depression after that, which was really it's like
Yeah. Right.
it's not
Yeah.
the best thing of my life. Let's put it like that.
No, yeah. And I mean, it's one of the things people don't really talk about around it. Like, but I know an awful lot of people have had that experience with it, where it gets them like there's this kind of minor doom feeling that
Yeah.
comes with it, or something that it's very odd. But I think you kind of, in one sense, maybe, I don't know. I'm not a medical expert in any way, but like, if you have any sort of proclivity for depressive thoughts, then it's definitely going to
Yeah.
have
Yeah, I mean
some sort of
that's exactly the same I've heard about. I mean, I do have proclivity from depression, so
Mm.
I guess maybe I don't know if you would agree. Like maybe magicians do in general. People that explore, this kind of spiritual states. I've never found a magician or a practitioner or I don't know a yogi or whatever that didn't have some sort of proclivity to depression. I'm not saying that they were like all the time depressed and like being like in
Yeah.
full of the depression, but to have explored that feeling, to be to be comfortable, to be aware of those depths. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think what it is that I don't think when your life is great that you're attracted to spirituality and magic and
Yeah.
that kind of thing, because you're just not looking for that, because it's too busy having a great life. Um, so I think the people who then kind of have let's say, I don't know, depression, minor depression, sadness, or they're looking for something's just not right. There's something that is they're in some way unfulfilled, or more kind of attracted to this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And you see an awful lot of people getting into magic too, when just after breakups,
Yep.
just when they're about to lose their house or their job, or they've been caught doing something they shouldn't and are now coming to court, or there's some sort of legal thing, and it's all the
Yeah.
kind of classical stuff that like when you think of hoodoo, nearly the standard hoodoo stuff covers all of that.
Yeah,
Love.
absolutely.
So it's like that kind of front line, I suppose, magic. And it's very rare, I suppose, that someone comes to a kind of a spiritual thing from unless they're from somewhat of a kind of unfulfilled or damaged place. And of course, you see the people as well who like get everything they want in the world. Like, like say some, like whatever you make from, but he's a good example. Like say Russell Brand, who had everything in the world.
Yeah. Everybody was successful, right? Yeah.
And then at the end went, well, that didn't fulfill me. So that didn't work. So then so you could, like, there is a point, I suppose, that when you can still be unfulfilled from
Absolutely.
everything
Yeah.
you want.
I mean, I guess this is also why I over the years I moved away from sorcery, magic of results. I mean, we're going to discuss a little bit of that shortly, and then move more into more like trying to make sense of my states of being, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed, because I in a way, like, I went to from as a teenager, right, as you said, like when I was a teenager, start doing this, I wanted to get the girl. And then I wanted to get. I mean, I was a musician at times. I wanted to get the better gig, or the better, the better record deal, all this kind of stuff, right? So I was definitely meddling with the Goisha, as Alan Bennett used to say to Crowley, and asking things, and then in time, possibly because I ticked a lot of those boxes, but then I was like, okay, but there's still something, and that something is still like, how do I make sense of this lingering sense of lack, that something's still not fulfilled, right? So
Yeah.
I ended up discovering that for me, magic really was making sense of those states of being, those states of reflection, of inner reflection, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we already got ourselves ahead of schedule, because
But I think it's an important kind of thing to kind of talk about, in a sense, because there is this kind of separation, in one sense, between what I suppose is called high and low magic, or something like that. And it's as if, you progress from wanting the things into, awakening or something like that. And it's kind of seen as the magic or the sorcery element of things, of trying to make your life better. is in a sense a bad thing to do, or a kind of a novice thing to do. And but there's a danger of kind of spiritual bypassing in there, in the sense of kind of going that where you go, well, you know, your life is a bit of a mess. You should probably sort that out before you're getting to, as good as sitting down 20 minutes a day meditating is, or whatever. Like,
absolutely.
Try and sort out your life too, and want the things. If you want the things, then want the things. That don't.
I think you definitely need to scratch that itch before you can move with something else. Like, I do speak of high and low magic, but not as in the sense that one is better than the other.
Yeah, sure.
Like, they are part of the same experience. However, I do think that, I mean, everybody here knows. Oh, by the way, if you're listening to the podcast, come on to the Patreon, because we are having a party here. So. Everybody here on Patreon knows, because they listen to me ramble twice a week, once too many times, that like, I would like the focus to be only it's called high magic. I don't even like the term high magic.
I don't like the terms either.
It's high and low makes sense. One is better than the other. Yeah, it's not that. It's like, let's call it maybe theurgy and sorcery. Even that, there's still like some baggage attached to those terms. Sure, but I would say that, yes, by all means, like, do all the sorcery you need. Get it out of your system, and maybe come back to it if needs be. If at some point in your life you need to grease your wheels, as I think Melissa was saying the other day, and that definitely do that. But in general, I would say that at some point, if your goal is to, I was about to say ascend. That sounded so. Anyway,
if your goal is to become a living god,
exactly. You can give a lot of money to meth heads in America.
True story.
That's a true story. Anyway, let's go back to the plan. There was a plan, I swear. There's some questions. There are some questions, and some of these questions are from the patrons here. Okay. And we're going to start with actually asking something a little bit different. This question from Anna, and she's asking if you can tell us a little bit about the comics you created. What are your favorite comics creator, and if you're a fan of Promethea by Alan Moore?
Okay. The comics thing is an interesting kind of thing with me. It's because that when I was a teenager, when I was a kid, kid till I was like, went to secondary school, all I wanted to do was comics. Because I had a cousin who was big into comics, and I kind of idolized him as a kid, and whatever he was into, I was kind of into. But it still developed into a kind of a love for the medium anyway. But when I went to secondary school, my art teacher was a twat, and he really he didn't like comics, and he didn't like what I was doing, and he didn't support it, and kind of put it down a lot. And he was trying to get me into graphic design, and I was going, I don't want to design washing liquid bottles. It's just not what I want to do. But that's what he was trying to push me. And I ended up, I just lost all interest in it. And I started getting into the music at that point. Okay. But sort of kind of 10 years later, when I'm my 28, 27, something like that, after I tried to be a rock star for a whole decade and failed miserably.
Trust me, you didn't miss much.
Yeah, so I hear. Yeah. But I was kind of come to the point where I was at that point I was a sound engineer, and that's what I kind of developed the music into, was that, and I just hated it because it's not what I ever wanted to do, but it was just kind of something I fell into, and I kind of felt at that time that if I keep doing this, that's it, what I'm doing for the rest of my life. If I don't stop this now, I'm going to be 60 and doing sound and hating it. And so, because what was the thing that I really liked to do? And it was, and I look back and it was, I love doing comics and drawing. So I hadn't not drawn in about 10 years. I started drawing again in my late 20s, and started doing comics and at that point. So it took me a good while to kind of get any kind of skill level up or whatever. But it was enjoyable. And then I kind of did a few comics, and they're all terrible. But your first comics, your first music, your first book, all of that should be terrible.
You always start from something and you improve over time.
And then I got really into it. I was heading up comic website here in Ireland. It was a huge kind of comic website, and I was getting into all, doing all the cons, the conventions and stuff like that. And I just noticed that it was as clicky as the music industry was, and it was the same kind. I was going, oh look, here I am in exactly the same place as I was, And so there was another kind of falling out with it. But in the last while, I've come back into it when I've kind of removed the need to be part of the gang, the need for any sort of success, the need to prove myself. And it's just, I do it because I enjoy it. And I, you know, some other people might enjoy it, but it's irrelevant if they do or not.
Yeah.
It's just something to express, to
you know, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I think that this is a crucial point, and that is that no matter what you do, you have to do it because you want to do it, not to belong somewhere. This is something that, I mean, as an ex-musician myself, that has been, you know, even for a while, I was doing that. It was my life, and it was exactly what you described. It was clicks over clicks over clicks. You had to be friend with this and that and that and that in order to go on the right festival, to do on the right tour, and to get the best, the best endorsements and whatnot. And it was like, I didn't sign up for this. It was destroying my will to do music, really. And in fact, I mean, I quit. I stopped.
Yeah, well, I was the same when around that time when I quit doing sound engineer and being in bands and all that. I couldn't listen to music for about a year and a half at all. I just couldn't. I just hated it. Like, I was like, I can't even listen to music now. It's like
I literally have no clue of any music that came out from 2015 up until maybe last year.
Right.
With the exception, you're gonna love this. With the exception of Taylor Swift.
Oh, right, okay, well, that's fair enough. So whatever you're into, I suppose.
And it's funny because I was never into bubblegum pop ever at all. I was like, okay, this is good. It is good. I think it's really good.
Yeah, go for it, man. I'm not into this kind of thing at all about music that there's cool music and not cool music. There's music that you like and there's music that you don't, and that's it.
It's Tom in the chat is saying it's Marco's fault that I listen to Tay now.
Well, yeah. I'll blame you.
So, moving from comic, so are you a fan of Promethea? Which, many people think that, Alan Moore's Promethea is, I mean, I agree, but Anna, you're on the call. Let us know if I'm correct. I mean, Promethea in many ways is seen as the definitive, like, esoteric comic. And I would agree.
Well, is it though? I mean, I think Invisibles is probably seen as that. I'm not saying I'm not saying that's the true story, but I mean, I would say that when people think of Magick and comics, they think of the Invisibles.
But you know what? It's funny you mentioned that. Thank you for mentioning that, because one of the first book club that we did here was the Invisibles, right? And I really thought that it would resonate way more than it did with a lot of people. Possibly, I don't know, maybe because we read it back then, when it was coming out. Maybe we were weaved into the spell that Grant Morrison was weaving.
Okay, yeah.
Also, I reread it like a year ago. Yes, a year ago. And I will tell you, it doesn't flow as good as I remember, right? I remember, I had this memory of this almost like magnificently crafted story, all the things that interweave with itself. And now when I reread it, like 20 years later, I was like, yeah, I mean, it's still great. It's still amazing. It is a magical spell by all means.
I think that there's two problems with Invisibles. One of them is that it's become, in a sense, cliche because everyone stole from it.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, when they're making a TV show of it now, and I can't imagine it's going to work unless they change it dramatically. It's because, like, people are just going to go, well, it's just the Matrix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or it's just, it's whatever 20 other things that have been stolen from it. So it just kind of, it's a bit like June in a sense that because it's changed so much. And now you see it now and you go, yeah, well, we've seen this a million times. Go, yeah, but it was the first to do it. Because we're like,
I think that maybe Promethea, I mean, I loved it. It's also that, I mean, there's almost like a didactic element into Promethea that it's not, I mean, it kind of, Alan Moore is really teaching, I mean, Kabbalah, really, with true Promethea. So, and I still think that there's some bits of it that didn't age well at all. Like, Promethea having to, her initiation is going through having to have sex with the old man. That's
that's like Alan Moore has to have something weird sexual about all his comments.
At some point,
something it's like James Herbert always has some sort of child abuse and all this bit.
Yeah, you're right.
It's very strange, whatever it is.
It's like the little bits and pieces. Like, can you please not?
Just don't do that. Just leave that.
Moving from comics, right? I guess it's the obvious like tie-in is with the big topic that I would like to discuss, which is the 40 servants. And by the way, for all of you who are listening on Spotify, you cannot see the amazing 40 Servants limited edition decks. This is the fifth. This is the limited fifth edition, right? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. You cannot get this anymore because
Well, you can still get the deluxe version of the decks and the standard version, but there was a limited edition, which I have it here, so I can show people. Which looks exactly the same as the deluxe, but it's it had a few extra cards, and people were always asking me, could they have four devils in a standard size tarot card? So I did that.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're like, other than this kind of the kudos, I suppose, of having it or whatever, it's, you know, the other decks, if you want to work with the 47s, you know, the standard deck is absolutely fine. Like, you know.
And so okay, let's go from the very beginning, right? Because I know that, I mean, there's plenty of material on the 47s out there, on your website, adventuresinwoo.com, and I guess there's also something on, like, apart from the 47s itself, you yourself made quite some informative videos and podcasts on them. But, like, can you give us, like, the super short introduction to the 40 Serpents? So
yeah, well, I think the best way to describe what I was trying to attempt to do at the time when I was putting them together. There was a kind of a time, it was just after, I was saying, after doing the comics, and it was like, because I'd spent my 20s trying to be a rock star, and then I said, well, you know, I followed my bliss into comics and do the art, and that wasn't very successful, and it was kind of, things were getting to the point where I felt I'm not going to be able to continue this. I'm going to end up having to get a real job, you know, an actual job or something like that. And even though, like, at that point, I had done, like, say, artwork for Alan Chapman's website at the time, Wiser. I did the cover to Gordon White's Chaos Protocols book as well,
Okay.
even though it was never credited from it, I did actually do it.
Well, you were never credited.
No, well, it's like, it's like, it's a kind of a weird area in that if you're, you know, you do art for hire or whatever, like, if someone paid for art, they're only
yes, I can get
it. They're not obliged to actually credit you. It's only you know, but you know, it's nice. It's kind of standard to do it, but he didn't. But whatever. And so I had done kind of some cool stuff or whatever, but it was all kind of falling apart, and I felt that I had I don't know, like, maybe 2 or 3 months that I could financially keep going, and then I was going to have to, you know, go out and get my job as a road sweeper or whatever it was. So what I wanted was to put together all the things I had been learning from the occult and all the different things that attracted me and I enjoyed, and put it into a system that was kind of for me to use. And I was going back to what we're talking about creativity. I was no intention of kind of doing it for other people, or to, what would other people like? What would be helpful for me? It was a pure selfish act of, what would I like? What would be helpful for me? How would this work for me? And I put all the disparate areas of kind of interest I had, from some sort of Eastern things, a bit of hoodoo, to your standard kind of Greek gods, to the, you know, very chaos magic-y approach to let's steal everything and pretend it's ours.
I like that. I'm gonna quote you on that.
Yeah. And so it's just over a couple of months I put it together to, and I was kind of, at the time as well, there was a few things going on. I became a big fan of the runes. And I kind of really, what I liked about them was that they had this double nature, that you could, and classically they didn't, you know, we didn't use runes for magic or divination.
Yeah.
We've no idea what we use runes for, really. But we kind of think we use them for magic and divination. So they have these dual kind of roles where, you know, while it, you know, you can have it where it means, Fahu means, you know, movable wealth. There's also a way of engaging that with the symbol, like a sigil, to, you know, attract, if you want, or to in some way affect, to have the, you know, that kind of energy. And I go, oh, that's very interesting. And I like that. And I'd also spent a bit of time in BOTA, which I'm sure you know, Mark, it's the builders of the Adytum, which is Paul Foster Case when he left the Golden Dawn and got scared because of all the magic, took all the magic out of the Golden Dawn.
Yeah, you shouldn't do Enochian because it's terrible and scary, right?
Well, you know, he was homophobic and racist, so, you know, that's what are you going to do? He's kind of taught tarot and Kabbalah through the system, the builders of the Adytum. And so he's like top quality, really good kind of insights on tarot stuff. And I've been doing that course for a while, and I enjoyed it. It started getting a bit too, I suppose, there's tenuous connections. It started to get like as if you're, you know, too much. I was going, well, I'm not really buying this, Paul, to be honest. But the kind of the foundational courses are really, really good. And if you're into tarot, it's probably worth. I mean, you can get it all for free on the internet now. You can get everything free on the internet, but at the time, I actually was paying the monthly fee for it. So
I would like to endorse this as well, because I've seen the material you're talking about, like the of the BOTA, in my like 6 months stint into the Societas Psicoscienze in Anglia,
okay.
and some of them were were on the BOTA as well. And you're right, like if you're interested in the basis of tarot, and I would
Yeah,
say like esoteric tarot, it's really well done.
yeah.
Of course, the SRA at some point discovered that I'm a Telemite, and was like, no, we cannot have Telemites here, so let's pretend you were never initiated. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things, without kind of fearing off the point yet again. But I had kind of joined different groups, like social groups. This was, I think there was a Facebook group, but there was a Yahoo mail group or something like.
Oh my god, yeah, I remember that.
But all of them were dicks. It's going like, and a lot of them had done the whole 15-year course. And I was going, well, what good is this if you do all of this and you still end up being, this egotistical know-it-all kind of thing? That, I mean, there's so many of these type of people.
I mean, I've been in OTO. I know.
Yeah, and so I was kind of going, well, that seems a bit pointless if you've all this knowledge, but and so that was kind of the first kind of real insight into that spiritual advancements in no way is self-improvement at all, at all. But anyway, go back to the thing about the Paul Foster Case approach to the tarot, particularly the major arcana, is he does see them in some way as not just pictorial things, that there's an actual character to it, or there's not, he wouldn't say a spirit behind it. Now, he wouldn't say it, but there's some sort of energy that you can engage with, that you could meditate with. Like, so the emperor, you could go and have a chat with, you know what I mean? And you could go, you could see what he's about, and you could kind of in some way engage with that, rather than him just coming up in a reading and telling whatever sovereignty, autonomy, whatever he represents. So I really like that. So I coming from, like, say, the runes and that kind of approach to the tarot, as well, it wouldn't be great to be able to do that, where you have this kind of idea of something that's a divination deck, that's always handy, but also that they had these individual servitors, or they had an individual personality or something.
So I would like to ask you, do you think do you think these servitors are internal or external? Is it something that it's something came from your psyche and it's parts of you then, and like maybe like the way that you have decided to order your view of the universe, right?
Yeah.
Or do you think there was some spirits coming out from the outside and say, because of course, as you mentioned, some spirits are recognizable, like the road opener, it's Ganesha.
Yeah,
much, right?
sure, yeah.
The devil and the opposer can be seen as two, it's that kind of energy, right? Of course,
Yeah,
I know
sure,
there's a difference between the two. And then there's some that are very unique, like media or the idea. They're very unique. So what do you say? Like,
I think
is there a difference?
Yeah, it's like, without the standard crap answer to it, I mean, I think it's yes and no and it's all the same thing. Like, there's a kind of a hesitance in me, and there always is with servitors, particularly if you do any kind of public servitor, which is kind of essentially what it is people are very strange around them, and they can start getting, you hear stories of particularly people confusing the idea of servitors with tulpas, where, it's starting to create havoc in my life, it's out of control, it's doing, it's doing weird stuff. And that's kind of like, well, I kind of, right, okay, that's possible, maybe. It seems to me that the people that happens to are people whose lives are quite chaotic anyway. That it's something that's that's probably not the first time that's happened in their life. And there's people, really very quickly trying to turn them into spirits. And I think I just try to be quite careful in all of that, and it's probably over cautious. But and the reason why I had one story, one guy, Brazilian guy, and he sent me a message on Facebook, I think it was, and was talking about the fixer from the forest that had told him that he had to remove his eye in order to get his girlfriend back.
Excuse me?
Yeah, and I like, and that's funny, and it's funny, but it's horrifying. And it
is horrifying.
Oh, really? And you kind of go, right, well, so you have to be kind of, I suppose, for me, I feel I don't want to be responsible for that. So, I kind of get a bit hesitant around with saying, well, what are they? And well, I don't know what they are. For me, they're obviously not spirits in the sense of the thing, because I came up with them. But also, as you say, Ganesh is in there, and he's definitely a spirit. So, I think they're I think they're whatever you think they are, as the operator, and I think that's at that level that we should probably engage them with.
Um,
What do you think? What do you think servitors are?
well,
What's your
that's a good
thoughts?
question because I like what you said at the end, and that is that it's whenever you I think actually just today, right, Jason Miller posts something, a blog on evocation conjuring, and people were asking him, who answers when we call a spirit, like if you like here on Patreon, for instance, we're doing the Arbatel operation over 7 months. Every month we do a spirit, and but how can we be sure that if we call Hagit on this Friday, we're going to conjure Hagit, we're going to be sure that Hagit is going to show up, right? Even if you've done all the things by the book, you prepared yourself. At the end of the day, the grimoires, we don't know where they come from.
Sure.
I mean, it's a tradition, right? Maybe the person that first composed the grimoires like 1,000 years ago mixed it up, and we
that definitely did.
Exactly,
Yeah, that definitely happened. Yeah.
And then just Jason Miller answered to say that like the only thing that answers is the thing that answers, and you will never know what that thing is, and that's fine, right? You have to be okay whenever you engage with conjuring, and whenever you engage with the spirit world, and whenever you leave behind the psychological model of magic entirely, which is something I've done long ago, and you start considering, I don't know, the spirit model of magic, the energy model of magic, right? I that's where I position myself into that strange mixture, and the strange, like, Venn diagram of the energy model and the spirit model, and there's me in the middle, which is like the whatever that is model, right? What I think is that, like, I always try to prepare myself, right? Whenever I engage, even with your servitors, right? And I did, like, I recently, I think I told like a couple of hours ago on your server. By the way, Tommie has a beautiful magical server. It's free, and there's a Patreon side, but you should sign up to the Tommie's Patreon anyway. And the point is that
You should, all of you, every single one of you, you should.
We'll links in the show notes as usual. However, like I said, somebody was asking me, what do you have a magical practice? Like, well, I don't really have a magical practice per se, apart from retreating into stillness and silence. But I've done all the bells and whistles for 20 odd years, 25 years. I don't even know. I'm getting old. But like, when I started getting prepared for this chat that we're gonna have, it's like, what, I'm gonna buy the deck finally. I'm gonna engage with the spirits. I did, there's like a prosperity channel with the Fortunate on your. I worked like a month ago. I work with Jardel, which is a devil. It's one two four more cards that you added. It's something. It's still like spirits, right? And I remember that Jardel is a devil that brings wealth, and I had a very relatively wealthy month. Like, things were coming in,
nice.
things unexpected, like crypto going up. And I'm still trying to get rid of the crypto, but I think it's gonna happen soon, because everything is tanking, right? So
I have some Ethereum if anyone wants to start. Quite happy to give it to you.
That's a good. So like these little things, and of course, my point is that I engage with the spirits, like preparing myself. So whatever kind of practice you can do to welcome someone in your house, right? Imagine that you were coming to my house, like, hey, Tommie, come over. I'm gonna like open the door and be in my pajamas, right? And maybe
filthy rotten.
I'm gonna shower, but bring some booze and things like that. Try to make the place nice. I mean, that's the way I engage with it. What is it? I don't know what is it. I don't know if it's internal. I don't know if it's external. I've known working with spirits and working with your spirits, with your servitors, that if you call these entities, this consciousness will answer back. The quality of the communication depends entirely on how much I prepared myself. I mean, this works for me. I know other people that just can drop in like this, like nothing, and they just like great communications with it. I can't. I need to prepare, right? So to answer your questions, like I don't know. I know that they answer. That's the thing.
I think a good way to kind of look at it is that they're ideas, and I don't mean that in the kind of lesson, but kind of to elevate what ideas are, like
a platonic set of ideas, if you want.
It's like ideas are the most important thing that we have in civilization, and we're kind of, because we're so used to them that we don't really see. And I know Dawkins kind of tried to put the thing in with memes and stuff, and that became very strange things on the internet. But this kind of idea that an idea that can become something that just travels around the world as if it has its own volition. It can kind of change people, can change the world, and the only thing that changes the world really is ideas.
Yeah.
And of course, come back to Alan Moore. He has this whole idea of idea space, where these things come, and part of our function is to bring ideas from this other place into
this place.
This place. But or another way to think of them is like a contraction, in the sense, if you have a kind of idea of creation in some sort of non-dual sense, where would God or spirit fit into a non-dual worldview? We go, well, there are a certain contraction of God or Shiva, or whatever word you want to use for it, that is particularly good in one area. It's like kind of, so, it's the aspect of God in the form of, the remover of obstacles, who also, most people forget, is also the placer of obstacles. People seem to forget that. But, so it's kind of like a contraction, or an easy thing to work with, rather than just going up to God and go, hello, big cheese. Can I have some money, please?
And this is, in my tradition, Telema, right? At the end of the day, there's only two characters, and that is Hadith and Nuit. Nuit is space, if you want. Hadith is motion or time, which are the same like you, because you move through time, right?
Yeah.
Everything.
That's essentially Shakti and Shiva, but
Shiva. That's exactly.
But the sex has changed, isn't it? Slightly.
No. In this case, you have. Yeah, you're right. Actually, yeah, the sex polarity has changed, but that's something you'll find like role reversals or averse viewpoints. It's something you find a lot in Telema. For reasons I'm not going to bore you with, nor anybody else, because is just bored to death of you listening to me talking about Dilemma. But the point is that it's the same concept, right? Like you have these two, and of course, like people think, oh well, that's if you think you say do two things, that's not the ur point, because there's already a polarity there. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's very true. From a Kabbalistic standpoint, when you look at Nuit and Hadith, you are already moving from Ein Sof Aur into Keter. And you would say maybe Keter is the point, Keter is Hadith, and so Nuit is still outside, but it's still moving into manifestation. Still, it's pushing into manifestation. Everything else.
It's the impulse, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
And like everything else is I like to use the term fractalization, because I like it really I think it sends out the idea of something that replicates itself in smaller parts, or if you start from the small part, you can replicate itself into the
with the same as a hologram, same idea.
Exactly, precisely that.
Yeah.
And so you have Hadith, then you can call it chaos, and then you can call it you can call it Adonai, you can call it Therion, you can call it Baphomet. That's complicated, but that's but yes, that's how this. It's always the same ideas. Like it's just like you bring ideas, you try to fractalize something and make it smaller so that you can actually wrap your mind around it. Because your mind
there's the answer. That's exactly what the 47s are. They're a fractal of the thing in order for you to be able to get your mind around it.
That's beautiful. We found it.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, we got it. Yeah. Thank you, folks. It's done.
Solved it. Yeah.
Actually, there's a question on this. This comes from Mars, and Mars is a graphic artist, very talented one. And he's asking if you use your artworks as anchor or source for this creation or thought form. Does it start from your artwork, or maybe these ideas that you pull from somewhere?
I have no idea where any of it comes from. And that's a terrible answer to anyone who isn't, I suppose. Well, it's not, because everyone's creative in some way. It's, think of writing a song. Where does a song come from? It's almost as if you're remembering it rather than creating it, or that it's hesitant ever to use the word channels, because it's not what I mean. It's not Abraham Hicks, or it's not, Ra or whatever. It's not where someone's in a kind of a trance state and they're, they're talking weirdly. which just seems to be what people in channel stuff do. But there is certainly a thing in art or in creativity where you're almost a conduit for something.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, that's how I feel. That your job as an artist is to get out of the way of whatever is trying to be manifested. And I suppose, in a sense, like the Alan Moore, that bring that idea space thing here.
Yeah.
There's a brilliant TED Talk. It's a very famous TED Talk. I'm sure lots of people have watched it. It's the Elizabeth Gilbert one, the one who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. But she really, there's a great kind of, she explains that kind of really, really well about this idea of ideas coming to people. The Carl Jung thing, people don't have ideas have people, and it's like this thing that we've all experienced, that you have this great idea and you don't do anything with it. And then someone else makes that movie and you go, that was my idea. And it was like as if the idea just went, well, you're not doing anything. I'm off to find someone who will,
Yeah.
And so to answer the actual question, what's the catalyst? The catalyst is kind of to allow whatever it is, the thing that wants to be. And that's such a woo answer, but that's as truthful as I can be about it.
I mean, to be fair, it doesn't sound like woo-woo to me at all. I mean,
okay.
that's how I personally experienced I would say any sort of magical relationship that I formed over the years. I keep on forming, and this is why maybe it's interesting to tie into the concept of non-duality right now, because that's exactly where I feel like that's the source of it all. Like being able to, when you say like to make space in your mind, make space in yourself for this other inspiration, muse, connection, whatever it is, come in. I mean, that's really is going to the null point, to the silence point, to the stillness of thought. Now, only when you can still the thinking, that's when boom, everything comes in.
Yeah, and then when it does, to try and make sure that you're not then turning it into something it's not, that you're not putting your ego on it. Like people who write any sort of fiction will kind of talk about the idea of that their character start in one sense rebelling against them, go that idea that what he was originally meant to do this, and you're right, and you go there's no way he's doing that. He has his own adventure. He's a completely different.
Yeah,
and you could say in a sense that's kind of a bit like a servitor then, that has his own volition or whatever. And again, that's kind of a dangerous word to say, that these things have autonomy, sovereignty, or their own volition, because people then think they can
do things.
So the answer is, while something like the healer from the 47s, which is a representation of healing, I mean, did I make that? No, because I mean the archetype of healing has been around since
forever.
And it's like, other than the mother and father, which is probably the oldest archetypes, like it's going to be fairly quick on the scene. But the healer can never be, no matter how much autonomy, sovereignty, or volition you could instill into a servitor, the healer can change in nature to not be the healer. That's essentially what it is. So if something is running amok that you think is the healer in your life, and it's not, because it can't be. It simply can't be, because that's not what the nature of it is. It's like saying, I've been using, I don't know, this knife for so long, and now it thinks it's a spoon. Well, it can't be. It just can't be, because it's a knife.
It's a knife, right?
It's a knife, yeah.
It's interesting that, I mean, you mentioned something, or rather, let's start again. Because every time we discuss of servants, servitors, egregores, like people get so hung up on, what is the process to create them? How do you do it? It's almost because we still think of magic as, having to find, say the right words at the right time from the right book, really, which is something, we get from fantasy, really, we get, maybe from grimoires as well. But,
or the grimoire tradition, one or the other, fantasy, there's overlaps.
Well, you know what, like, let's not get there, because we can open a can of worms over there. But it's something that I remember many years ago. I was working at Treadwells, and Phil Hine was doing a job for Treadwells as well at the time. So
cool.
We were going to lunch together, and I realized, I mean, I was still like trying to figure out things at the time, and I was like, Phil, how do you do a servitor? Like, I mean, you wrote about it. I even read the first things I read about servitors were your books. How do you do it? It's like, you just will them into existence, and that's it. You just start thinking about them. You just you give them a name, you give them a shape, you give them something to do, and you tell them what to do and for how long, and maybe you decide what they want and you feed them. That's it.
That's it, yeah. And your first servitor will be terrible, and the same way your first book will be terrible, and your first comic will be terrible, and your first music is terrible. Because and you get used to it. The problem, I think, with all of this is that, and one of the things I really love about chaos magic is why don't you just try it and see what happens? Yeah. And people are too, because I suppose it comes from the thing that people are afraid of the boogeyman, or their life falling apart, or that the devil's going to turn up at the door, or whatever it is. Once they, do one sigil, there he is. Lucifer's come looking for you. I own your soul now. That's how this works.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do about that?
and of course, to find out that it's a lot harder to get Lucifer to come to your house. But I think that's that kind of thing, and there's this hesitancy to experiment, which was one of the great things about chaos magic, for all the faults it has. But it's like, well, why not? How do you do a sigil? Well, here's many ways to do a sigil, but you can do a sigil any number of ways. Do 5 different ways and see which works best for you. If it's a case, as a lot of people in chaos magic, not everyone, but a lot, and it is one of its tenets, is what it's based on, that the agency of magic is belief. Yeah. Then it's not important how I do a sigil. It's only important what you feel is the most powerful way of doing a sigil. If that's to be believed, that belief is actually the key behind it. And to some extent, it probably is.
I think intent and belief is important. Over the years, I started to realize that maybe it's not all that there is. No. Maybe there can be something bigger than whatever you believe, because at the end of the day, who is you, right?
Yeah, but that's it. Yeah. And I know, say, Dr. Skinner, not a medical doctor, he would say that all spirits. And I think that's too easy to. I think it's more complicated than that. I think there's a relationship thing that has to come into it, that it's more than just... And it's probably us putting it in a way, just from a limited point of view, that it's none of those things, but all of those things. And
I was about to just say exactly this, like possibly all these models of magic, right? It's just us trying to make sense from our perspective, something that's so infinitely more complex, right? Or maybe more simple, right? It's just that our perspective doesn't have enough data to even put together a coherent system. And that's why we have to see the same thing again and again from different perspectives. And then in the end, we end up deciding what works for us. Like for me, as I said, a mix of spirit and energy works very well. Psychological didn't work for me, because I was like, I just don't see that in me. It doesn't work. Whenever I engage with these ideas as something external or something energetic, which is, the energetic is also me, but it's not in my mind. Yeah. It works better for me. It works. Other people do other things and they get results. That's another point, right? Like, do you get a result?
No, that is the point I think we're trying to make, is that there's no point in you asking me or asking Phil Hine how to make a servitor, because he is operating on more than likely operating on a completely different way than you are. Yeah. And then if you do it the way Phil Hine says that you should do a servitor, and no other way, and it doesn't work, then you're just, you come away going, well, like servitors don't work, everyone's lying, or whatever. And it's like...
So, we've been talking about servitors for a while now, and I've been shuffling the deck. Would you like me to take a card, like a servitor for the year? Let's see. Sure. Not for let's see which one.
Well, I could do it either way. But
no, please.
Okay, so what are we doing it for? What's the?
It's like almost like the servitor that is going to.
That is most relevant to this community for this year.
Yeah, why not? Okay. Why not? Of course, if you're gonna pull something terrible, we're gonna put it out of the report. I'm joking.
There's no negativity. There's no positivity. It's just things we enjoy and things we don't enjoy. That's it.
I like the non-dual approach here.
Okay, so the dead.
Oh wow.
No, but this is good, because unlike, I suppose, like your classic tarot death card, which of course isn't about death, as we all know, apart from the times when it is. And it's about change and stuff. The dead in the 47s, while it can represent death, it very rarely does. It's more about learning from previous experience, from learning from the ancestors, learning from things that have gone before, learning from past mistakes, or learning from, rather than have to learn everything for yourself, look at other people who've done this, and what did they learn from it, or what was the lesson from that. So you're coming from a place of building, on the shoulders of giants, or building on the past, rather than trying to work it all out yourself.
Yeah.
So that's what I would suggest in this, is that it's the word that's coming to mind is tradition. I mean, like, so you can take what you want from that. So
You know, it's funny you mentioned this because I was discussing this on the community the other day, and the fact that the way this community came together was it's really we are children of the pandemic in a way. Like it all still came together during the pandemic, and
that a Stephen King novel. It's Children of the
Children of the Pandemic. Oh god, that's maybe in a different reality.
All blonde, small, just come.
Exactly. My point being is that, like I said, we came together because we had a lot of time, right? So there was a lot of live streams and a lot of like things. And we were always on Zoom, and that's not gonna be the case forever because we all want, first of all, this pandemic. I don't know if I don't even want to say it to be over anymore, but it's like it'll be manageable, more manageable than it is right now. And to be fair, it has been more manageable. Maybe it's because here in the UK we're all mad and like they didn't care about the Omicron surge and everything else.
Oh well, I mean, here in Ireland we've 95% vaccinated, and we've run out of tests. We can't test people anymore. We've
I mean that's the same in the UK. They just said yesterday that we will have to learn to live with the virus. It's like, well, we've been doing it for 2 years.
Okay. Well, in other words, we've given up. Whatever. Yeah, just die now, will you please?
Maybe in many ways, this is also the dead, right? It's like just like move on, change, renew yourself, and let what needs to rest. And
brilliant, and
let what needs to, I don't know, resuscitate. I don't know. That's an interesting term. Come back to life, maybe. I mean, that's.
But also, learn the lessons from it too. And we're as particularly from a society point of view, there's every likelihood that if this pandemic ever ends, which I'm sure it will, that we learn nothing from it. So I mean, like and the next time that it happens, we go, didn't this happen?
Just learn that. I know, right? I mean, without getting too political, I really hope that we learn that we need like some sort of universal basic income, but I don't think we got that yet. So,
but I mean, but you were saying about things like just I guess we'll bring it back to the community thing about Zoom and meeting up and whether that'll go away. I think that's going to be just included now. I think that the Zoom, whatever, the other, internet protocol voice things are available. What happened to Skype? The pandemic, the biggest casualty of the pandemic was Skype.
Exactly. Well, I record on the Penny Royal podcast on Skype, which is
do you? Right.
That's so weird. It's like, what is this? I don't know what this is, but they use Skype. So
1996 called the
exactly.
Skype back. But I think it's going to be back to in-person retreats, in-person meeting. But I think people have kind of gone to enjoy this kind of being able to have this kind of interaction, which is more than just Facebook, where or text, which is, as good as Discord is, it still has that quality of, are they really saying what I think they're saying? And I think they are, but when it's face to face, or you have, even audio, you're definitely can't go, oh, I meant that as a joke. You go, no, you fucking didn't.
It's like, no, we can tell the cues.
So, so I hope I kind of like that kind of element of it, and I like the.
It's great, absolutely. I mean, I'm going back to organize things in real life, like face to face, and I'm trying to figure out how I can maybe live stream them. I have something coming up next week, but that was not possible to stream. But I was already looking like, okay, if we do this again, can we live stream? Can we record it at least? Can we do it again? And you're right. I think it's like this is not going away. No, but it's also true that we have to learn from something, what worked, what didn't, and just to reshuffle things, and then to we can also start maybe doing necromancy actually. Necromancy.
Oh yeah, well there you go.
That's a good idea. Folks, you'll do first. We're gonna do necromancy. One last question. Well, one last series of questions maybe.
Okay.
So this is from Logan. And Logan is asking
Hi Logan, how are you?
From your podcast, the embracing of non-duality seems a more recent occurrence. Was it, or was it something you feel that has been brewing in you for a while? And as you know, as a non-dual Thelemite, I was very interested. We had this discussion. I was on Liber Spood. We discussed it a little. Well, we were supposed to discuss about non-duality. We discussed more about Telema and the other.
Liber Spood kind of didn't ever really fulfill. It was kind of like going. we'll talk about this, and they never did because he's Spud's Irish and he just can't keep on track. It's fine.
It was great though. Like,
Yeah.
almost 2 hours passed before we even got to the point.
I know, yeah.
So yes, like what was the non-duality? Your vision on non-duality? The fact that it was like something brewing, or is it something new?
I think it was more of a case I wasn't really aware of the name, but I knew what it was. You know what I mean? It's like I mean, I obviously had heard of non-duality, but I was kind of going, what is that exactly? You know, I like not two. Why isn't it one? Why don't you just say all is one? And you kind of go, all right, because it's not. That's still that's pointing at something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of a lot of that, I suppose, is trying to work out, because the big question, I suppose, come back to what we were talking about at the beginning, why did I come to magic, I suppose, why did I get into spirituality or that, was this kind of going, why is this happening? Why? Like, and it's almost a question that you're not really allowed to have, because people go, will you stop wondering about why, you know, and just get on with your life, you know, go walk in the factory and shut up, or whatever it is. And it's like, even in spiritual circles and magic circles, people kind of don't really like when you kind of ask that question, because I think it's the most important question, because if you don't know why we're doing this, how do you know what you should be doing?
Yeah.
You know, and I find it fascinating that more people aren't obsessed by why and the way I am. But of course, you know, no one has to think the way I do. But so there was this kind of impulse to try and find out why, and kind of constantly looking at different kind of cosmologies and go, well, that just doesn't, you know, you get a wee bit in and you go, yeah, but that just falls apart when you get to, you know, actual life, or, you know, like the kind of, if you see the cosmology of the New Age, which is essentially everything's your fault, you know, which go, well, I had that with Catholicism, so thanks very much.
Can we move on? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's kind of a sense, I suppose, if you do any sort of meditating over a period of time, and you become aware of that, whatever word you want to do, like the witness, being aware of being aware, or there's other kind of thing of it, when you kind of, you know, start seeing, hold on, I'm not my thoughts, because they're coming and going, and there's something else that's always there apart from that. And there's then a sort of, I suppose, when you get to that kind of thing, that there's kind of a sense of then seeing. I remember once, and it's not that long ago, and it's probably, I talked about one of the videos where I was in the forest and I was looking at a tree, and I knew, not kind of, I'd read this in a book, and I heard someone else talking about it, because it is, you know, it's a common thing where there was something in the tree that was also in me, and I went, all right, and then I noticed it was in everything, and I've gone, okay, so that's, you know, that I should probably, you know, go with that, or understand that, or you know, not, I don't know, I was going to say accept, but that's not the word. It's kind of okay, that's just right.
I would say, yeah. Because I agree with you. It's difficult to even find the right verb for it, because, you know, and this is something I said many times here, is like, every time you put a verb to something, you describe a process, and a process is between two things, right? So it's not a verb. It cannot be verbalized. It cannot be spoken at all. So
no, because that's instantly to make it dualistic. You know, you're putting it in a box. You're naming it. Like, language, as brilliant as it is, and it's made us, you know, get us where we are, but it's also, our language is inherently dualistic.
Yeah, it's a fetter. It's a fetter. It keeps us to the word of manifestation.
Yeah, exactly. You know, big time.
Yeah, exactly. Peter says verbs imply object and subject. That's precisely it. And, you know, like, in Telema, you get this because the verb is rahur kuit. Like, that's it. That's
right. Yes.
That's the how, you know, creation manifests itself through. Well, it's called the children of Nuit and
the pandemic.
There you go. It's a pan in a way, if you want to go there.
All right. Yeah. It's a strange pandemic. That's odd. I blame Greg Newkirk for all of that.
We should do Hellier. We should discuss about Hellier as well, but it's like it's getting late now. One final question, and then I'm going to ask you where people can find you. One final question is. And this is a question that we tend to ask everybody here. So, what excites you at the present, right now, when it comes to magic? And I would also add is, like, do you think we are in a magical revival thanks to all these, you know, occult influencers, TikTok, witch talks, or are we gonna go into a magical contraction again?
I think we're in somewhat of a revival. I think the witch talk and all that is coming from that rather than causing it. You know, I think it's a kind of that's people. There's a wave. Say it's not a wave, but there's a wave, and that's causing witch talk. Not that I know an awful lot about it because I've never been on TikTok in my life, but I understand the concept of it. So I think there's an interesting kind of. There's always this kind of sense of impendingness. Okay, that I feel that's part of the nature of this reality. That there's kind of a looming, in one sense, maybe apocalypse, but a looming enlightenment or a goal. You know, there's always kind of emergence, and I think that is an expression of the emanation of, which would be, as you're saying, which is Shakti, right, in the tantric sense. So you have Shiva, which is just, you know, the dude, God.
There,
I mean, it's genderized, but it's not genderized. It's irrelevant. But it's and then it's what, you know, this kind of emanation that comes with it. That's like this creative force, or in Theosophy, it's like the array, or you know, there's all these different words. But and I think we're becoming really aware of it, whether it's becoming stronger or there's just more people aware of it. But it has both sides to it. It has the looming apocalypse and the looming enlightenment at all times. And I think that I don't think that ever goes away. It just feels very present. It feels more present now than it did 20 years ago. But is that just because I'm more aware of it, and you know, than I was 20 years ago?
I would agree. I would agree with you for both reasons. Like, I feel the same, but I'm also 44 almost. So of course, like,
so am I. So there you go.
I became more aware of it all, and I remember that at the end of the day, apocalypse is apokaleo, means revelation. So it is removing the veil probably onto whatever we are experiencing. So
and the thing from a non-dual, which is kind of that all of this, if you believe in the non-dual sense, all of this is divinity. All of it, the shitty stuff, the good stuff, the bad stuff, and all of it. Like, we could go, well, if we could just remove this, we could do this. It's going to, well, all of it is part of it. It's the full expression of divinity, as it is, and the kind of, I suppose, to want it to be different. That's not to say don't, you know, feed the hungry, don't try and save people. It's not spiritual bypass. It's definitely 100% it. But it's in that it's part of it, and it's never not going to be part of it. And you know, if you're waiting for the day when, you know, the golden age, then I would suggest possibly not do that, because I don't think that's how it works. I think it's all of it always in webs.
And you know, like the idea of the Saturnian golden age coming back. I mean, maybe it's not what people think. It's not like, you know, a bucolic image of, you know, pastors and everything thing. It's more like you say, like this kind of incredible awakening, because again, Saturn is Mahakala, which is the great destroyer. It's the destroyer of illusion, right? So yes, people that want to have this idea of the coming back of the golden age of Saturn, right? It's like, because you have to be aware of everything that goes on into the world, the good and the bad, as you just said, the pleasant and the unpleasant, and be okay with it, which is much easier.
Well, I know,
it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, absolutely. And like, but the other thing is not to be necessarily to be just okay with it, but also to know that it's okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Tommie, thank you so much. It was been a fantastic chat. I think we touched on 1% of the things I wanted to talk, as usual, you know. So
next time
we'll have to do this again. Where can people find you?
If you go to adventuresinwoowoo.com, all the links are there, or if you just search Tommie Kelly, Tommie, on Google, you find me and an American football player. That's who I've exactly the same name. So I'm not the black American football player. I'm the other guy. So
okay, perfect, fantastic. Of course, your links will be in the show description, both on Spotify and on YouTube. And that's it for tonight. Thank you for being with us, and thank you all for listening. And I will see you on the next round.